Thank you, Mark. I really like the name Gary. It's just simple, right? But it is important for me to say thank you as I start here. There are so many people that take part in this whole regulatory discussion, not just here at the summit each year, but throughout the year. Ron and Leslie, the vice chairs of our committee, people like Bob Baldwin, John Simmons, and everyone at RIPEC, the Rhode Island Business Coalition that offers so much insight to what we accomplish and try to drive toward, and just Lynn and Marie in the State House, the folks that have believed in the issues that we have sought to change, the Secretary of State and the Speaker certainly have helped us to move these things forward. And while I guess, John starts with a joke, and it's always best to do that, but I can't. In the past week, I've learned that there are 3 daycare facilities and 1 restaurant, small businesses where people have just said, I'm done, can't do it anymore. And that's the note that I think we need to hear again and again, unfortunately, until we get to the point that we've sufficiently changed the atmosphere that Professor Ladaro said this morning needs to be done with an approach of crisis. That because in so many levels, that is what it is. We have 5 areas of interest. We can't come down to 3 issues. 5 areas of interest that we will speak to. We want to offer and encourage support for the Office of Regulatory Reform. But this work is hard. In any other measure of things that I've done, I think, the 8 or 9 years that I've put in here, we have some good things to point to, but by any other measure, I'd be judged a catastrophic failure for failing to get more done. And I'm not saying that in defeat. I just offer it in terms of recognizing that this is hard work, and we need the Office of Regulatory Reform to be there doing it and helping us to make further progress. The new Administrative Procedures Act that was passed last year, thankfully to the folks in the State House, is a great new tool that will help us to get more of this work done. And it's a great example of what would not have happened, in our opinion, if it were not for the diligence at the Office of Regulatory Reform. We would encourage that the Office of Regulatory Reform be allowed to establish a dashboard of their activity, such that people at any time can be, whether you're a legislator, an elected official, or a business person or a resident, be able to understand what is happening at ORR and hopefully gain confidence that the process is moving forward. The next issue seems to be in a lot of people's minds. I don't know what that means, but marijuana. Although we have some people who can't even spell it. Right, Leslie?
Nice, thanks, Gary.
Maybe that's a good thing. What our committee says is think it through, please. It is an extremely complicated issue for the business community. The potential impacts to labor relations, to hazard control, to banking matters, real estate matters, it's just so complicated and has the potential to be just a beast in the small business community that we want to work with you to understand it and to help draw conclusions that make sense for both government and for business. It should be no surprise that licensing and permitting continues to be a concern for the small business community. We'll continue to advocate for the electronic building permit system that we began our advocacy on 6 years ago. It is an example I hope you will be proud of in terms of what the state can do with computers. Not every project that gets taken on is a disaster. As a local official now, I am happy to say that we're one of the 10 communities that did roll out the permitting system, and the feedback that I'm getting from our permit officials is that they love it. They were concerned that it might be difficult for them to use. Once they got familiar with it, they're all in. So it works. And what we would ask from you is to get set a goal for rollout throughout the other 29 cities and towns to make that all happen. It's a good program. It's a success story for the state of Rhode Island. We encourage that we continue to use lean management to expedite processes in every entity. Mark already spoke to that. It works. It can give us more and more, and it's the only way for our systems. It's one of the critical ways for our systems to be able to become more friendly to the business community. We need to continue to force agencies to collaborate, to share data, to reduce the repetitive submissions. And with that in mind, we're also thinking that it would be beneficial to both the agencies as well as the different businesses that have to file so many applications in a year, to give them, like a credit card company gives you the opportunity to be able to set when you get your statements and what time periods you have for start and end of your billing period, so that we smooth the regulatory burden out for businesses and help them, enter things one time as opposed to having to do the same things again and again and again. And then, interestingly enough, the community is asking for adequate enforcement that helps to level the playing field and protect our resources at the same time. So adequate enforcement of clear, predictable, and reliable regulations is still something that, since Leslie said it back when she was at ORR, we maintain as a secret to success for the state of Rhode Island. We wouldn't be who we are without making comment about education and labor management issues. We continue we ask you to continue to drive the career tech education system in Rhode Island to a place where one entity manages it with the proper focus that it deserves. Right now we have a fractured system, and I wish the governor was here to hear this, because while she has taken some great initiatives in new programs and getting business involvement, it continues to be in separate silos that get managed by folks who can't concentrate on it. And we need career tech education to be a driver of opportunity for many of our young people who have a hard time finding a place in education that embraces them and attracts them in. We think that get good education is the best path to a job and a life that is productive and I'll offer void of the legal system. It was interesting, Speaker, in your debate at the end of last session that your advocacy for our change in the career tech programs bumped into the Senate side with issues related to the judicial system, and we offer that again, educate people. Let's keep them out of the judicial system to the point that it works. The apprenticeship is still an issue for Rhode Island. It does not help that we put barriers to employment in place by requiring that there have to be 2, 3, 4, 5 journeymen before a small business can hire another apprentice. We understand the balance that some folks want and the control that some folks want, but if we fail to realize what kind of an impediment to growth of job opportunity and business opportunity, it really is, I'm beside myself to try to find the right words to just say we're leaning on an architecture of the past and we need to embrace the future. Additional labor management dictates from government will not help us grow or sustain our opportunity. We'll ask that you do not mandate predictive scheduling or sick time pay. We know the value of our employees, whether we're in the public sector now or those in the private sector. We know that we have to take care of our employees. We don't need government to remind us that it should be done in a particular way. We want to do it in a way that works for our businesses and for our employees. trust business to do business and run business instead of trying to mandate it in so many ways. And with that, let's go to holiday flexibility that we've talked about in the past. The Northeast has this rigid requirement that manages, that tells us how to handle holidays, that we need to get away from and give flexibility. Businesses will allow, encourage their people to enjoy holidays. They don't need to be mandated to do it in the way that we do it with overtime pay requirements and with permit requirements as they exist in the state today. And finally, in that category, independent contracting requires us, and by us I mean business and legislator and government leaders, to create a level, to work together to identify the way that we create a level playing field while not interfering with the millennial gig economy. That circumstance is developing where people don't necessarily work for the same company every day, especially in the electronics world. They work on different gigs. They'll be in for a few months and go on to another one, and some of them do very, very well, and they're interesting, exciting environments that we don't want to interfere with, but at the same time, we have to stop the roofer who's coming in from wherever with no licenses, no insurance, and limited concern for our rules, and just doing what they do. And finally, energy. It's been mentioned before, but cost and reliability of energy is a challenge that New England faces in a grand way. Within 3 to 5 years, 1/3 of New England's generating capacity is scheduled to close. We generate something on the order of close to 40 gigawatts of power in New England. 13 gigawatts is on the table under the current rules to close for various reasons, whether it's aging out or fuel related, whatever the case might be. That is an extreme concern at this time of the year that we need to be attentive to. We need to have defensive measures, as we always do in government. But we also need to have offensive measures to be able to make sure that we satisfy the future needs that will keep us warm, for one thing. And that's not just business. We're talking about residences being able to heat their homes, because there may be gas coming into them that's mandated. But if there's no electricity, that heating system doesn't run. And we are, again, approaching a circumstance where further plant closures will cause a condition where we would not be able to endure a polar vortex condition like we had just 2 or 3 years ago. It is a very real condition for the next few years that we need to, again, develop an offensive attitude towards to get ourselves to where we need to be. With that, we say thank you for listening, and we work on.